for the Chicago chapter of GYP 100, and sitting next to him, we have Dr. Jane Rhodes, who is the author of Framing the Black Panthers, The Spectacular Rise of the Black Power Icon. And then next we have Babadula, who is a representative of the Prisoners of Conscience Committee. And then next we have a former member of the Illinois Black Panther Party, Mr. Dunlop. To get us started, I'm just going to have us go down the line, have everyone sort of introduce themselves and what they do, maybe give some first impressions of the film and some reflections.
My name is Damon. I am a part of a few organizations, but I'm a part of a greater collective of the youth organizing community that is building right now in this turbulent climate in America, and specifically in Chicago. And my first impressions of the movie is, first of all, seeing anything with the Panthers is gonna make me smile, because they are in a lot of ways my greatest political heroes. However, they were so grand, right, that it is limited in like putting it into a cute movie that we can sit and watch. So I just know that there's a lot of the politics and a lot of the actual like economic and political critiques that they had that we were not really able to see or really chew on, that I hope people are inspired to go learn about. Oh, so
We'll all share.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, first of all, I want to say how amazing it is that there's so many people packed in this room. I think the legacy of the Black Panther Party is a critical part of our history. And you know, I'm part of the elder generation, and when I look at this, and it reminds me so much of where we've come, but where we haven't come. And I think we could talk a lot about how the issues of the Black Panthers resonate very much with us today. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a professor and chair of the African American Studies Department at UIC up the road. So, and some of my students and other colleagues are in the room. And, you know, issues of social justice are at the heart of what we do in our department. And so, you know, I've written about the Black Panthers. I know many of the people in this film. It's both part of my history, but also a part of my intellectual interests. And if you have questions also about the film, I know Stanley Nelson, the filmmaker, and I was one of the consultants on the film. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you all think about it and seeing where we take this message from here.
Greetings, everybody. Chairman Fred and the comrade who was scheduled to present tonight in LA for the 20th anniversary of the youth, or excuse me, for the gang summit. So they couldn't make it, so they asked me to come, and I'm honored to be here. A little nervous, I really don't do a lot of speaking, but be happy to answer a few questions. The Black Panther Party, though militarily defeated, ideologically they won. Militarily defeated by the infamous United States COINTELPRO program, which was just not limited to the assassinations, the frame-ups, and false imprisonments, but also propaganda. And the propaganda, state slander set the stage for frame-ups and assassinations. So we must look at everything from an objective point of view, and a lot of times we may get caught up because the films may touch on like a lot of emotionalism, bring out a lot of things, but we have to say, okay, these people were around, such and such, may be around, but a lot of times were they really with us? I have a lot of people in my car be with me, but they don't really be with me, you know what I mean? So with that being said, thank you for letting me present, and pass the mic.
Yes, it is very impressive to see such a large number of people come out. Takes me back to the days watching the film. It's a good overview of the Black Panther Party and some of our history. Party opened in October of 1966 with 2 chapters, one in Oakland and one in Southern California, I believe. And in about 2 years, it spread to 43 chapters and 3 international sections. And that kind of growth for any organization is difficult to manage. If it wasn't for the 10-point program platform of the Black Panther Party, if it wasn't for the newspaper, we would have been a ragtag organization with individuals just saying whatever we please. But the Black Panther Party had a lot of structure. It was an organization of committed, courageous, young black volunteers. And this movie's a good overview. It gets you started. Now, I've got a couple of books down here that you can read a little more about the Black Panther Party, but I'll turn this back over to the moderator and we'll deal with questions later.
I actually want to maybe pick up with what you were mentioning. Like you're saying, the film, it gives an overview of a very vast, deep history. It was a short history in terms of how long the party actually was able to survive, but it was a very, very deep history. So maybe I want to start us off, maybe you or Jane could talk about the 10-point platform and program and talk about the survival programs and some of the things that were happening on the ground, some of the ways that the party was building and extending itself to the broader community.
Well, again, as I said, the 10-point program and platform is it's really the backbone of the party. Point number 10, if I can paraphrase, says we wanted land, bread, housing, clothing, justice, and peace. And as our major political objective, we wanted a United Nations supervised plebiscite, which is a poll of the people, because black people in America have never been questioned as to their national destiny. We've never been able to choose where we wanted to go, what we wanted to be called, where we wanted to live. We never had a choice here. We forget that we're here due to the transatlantic slave trade. Our struggle goes back to 1619. The Black Panther Party was just one part of that struggle. And it's cyclic, and we go through these things. So the 10-point program is critical in understanding what the party was about. It spoke to all the needs and aspirations of black people, and that's the basis of our organization. I'm sure, Jane, this sister, I read your book some time ago, so she's done more research on it. I was a Panther back in 1968. I'm a short time. When we opened the chapter here in November of 1968, from 1968 to December of 1969, it's a little over 12 or 18 months. And so we went from nothing to the murder of Fred Hampton in that short period of time. A lot of things happened for me. And watching this film brings a lot of those memories back. But keep in mind, Black Panther Party in Illinois didn't close its doors until 1974. So we were still doing work here in Illinois. And we did represent the whole state.
I just wanted to maybe pick up on a couple of the points that you said. One, that the Black Panther Party was the most visible manifestation of the black freedom struggle during that time, but it certainly wasn't the only one. And many of the organizations, it was influenced by SNCC, it was influenced by Malcolm X, it was influenced, the 10-point program, an earlier version of that had been written by the Nation of Islam. So one of the things to remember about the Black Panther Party is that they were picking up on the legacy of other movements, but as they said in the film, bringing it to an urban context so that people in northern communities that were struggling with racism and inequality would have their own agenda, their own platform, and their own organization. So I think that's a crucial thing. The other thing about the 10-point platform, I'll say, is that you look at it and you have to think about how radical it was. What the radical argument was it's radical to say that we want decent housing and we want food and we want employment. So those are absolutely radical, but it also went on to ask for things like an exemption of all black men from the draft, because this was in the midst of the Vietnam War. So one of the things that the 10-point program is doing is not only laying out an agenda for the members, but really making this incredibly radical manifesto about civil rights and social justice. So that's why it lasts today, and that's why you all know about it today, and we continue to sort of reference that as a document.
And could you also talk about, or both of you, anyone who wants to jump in, talk about the survival programs and talk about some of the effects of those on the community?
Well, the Black Panther Party started out as the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And that was a response to the overt police brutality that was going on in Oakland, California at that time. The history of that is that a lot of blacks migrated from the South to California and other places. And when they got to Oakland, they were marginalized and they were kind of brutalized by the police. So that was, the first initiative was to get the police off our backs. But we saw broader issues that need to be addressed. So issues of housing, issues of education, and the needs of the community, a poor community, an oppressed community. So one of the things we cited on was initially the Breakfast for Children's program, which nearly every chapter across the country had a breakfast program for children. Many of the churches, schools initiate their own programs. And later on, that was mimicked by the state when we have free breakfast in schools now for school children. But we did health clinics. We had 2 clinics here in Illinois and Chicago. We had one chapter had an ambulance service. In Illinois, we did free busing to prisons program because back then, as in now, a lot of our people are in jail and we can't get there because they're in isolated locations. So we had a free bus program to take people to the prisons. There were free shoe programs. In Oakland, they gave away groceries continually. So these were programs meant to sustain the population because we felt that social revolution was going to come within our lifetime. So we were going to turn things around. We were going to, the people were going to rise up and reject the system that had oppressed them. But these were temporary things that we had done.
I wanted to add about those programs, since you brought up the survival programs, because those what they were, survival pending revolution. And I find it very interesting that Eldridge Cleaver, which the film focused a lot on, he was never with the survival programs. He didn't join the party till the rampant display, but that's a different topic. But I wanted to go on and kind of say what the doctor here said about legacies, because they are important and they serve as a prototype for how future generations should come. So it must be clear that we define them, and it's not like to ego trip, but it's just clear to be, on the right side of history, to know who did what. And with that being said, another thing I want to touch on was that don't get it twisted that the party was an armed propaganda unit. And I believe it was Minister Doc Satchel, the Deputy Minister of Health, who had dropped out of college to run a free medical clinic. And a lot of these survival programs, the people end up themselves taking over. But he said that the Black Panther Party, the survival programs would, meet the basic needs and desires of the people and let the people know that they were concerned about the basic needs and desires of the people. And a lot of times people would like to cast them as like a community activist group, but we must be clear that they were a revolutionary organization. And a lot of work that the women did, I think the film should have had that in it too. A lot of the work that the Everyday Sisters did, I want to say Yasmin from New York, but don't quote me on that name. But we have Deborah Johnson, Queen Jerry, and so many other forces, phenomenal women that should be displayed as well.
I want to build on what the brother was saying, because it's very important for us to be explicitly intentional about expanding the history of how we understand the party, especially women's role when we talk about the survival program. So like he said, the survival programs were service in nature, but the goal was to build revolutionary masses. So, you know, it was the gun as a symbol, and it was the paper that got them popular, but it was the survival programs that made them powerful. Hey, baby. and it is important to know, like, Elaine Brown was mentioned in the movie, and there's like this quick 30 seconds of like women struggle with sexism, and that was pretty much it. It doesn't talk about how they overcame that or the power that they garnered, and that she was the chairman and the leader of the party for like 3 years while he was in exile. And she had the entire Central Coordinating Committee be made up of mostly women. And not only did they do breakfast, and not only did they have medical services, but they also opened up a school in Oakland. And we don't really appreciate that history because it wasn't just any school, it was awarded as the #1 performing school in all of California, right? So the Panthers started their own educational program and was outperforming public education. And we don't really understand that history and just how violent it is to destroy that work.
So David, I want to
Keep going. There's too much to talk about.
David, I want to come back to what you were saying about the gender dynamics and maybe bring that into the present. Maybe have you speak a bit about how that's playing out today, what our gender dynamics are and our politics are as BYP, and also how that spreads across the movement.
So BYP, Black Youth Project 100, and a lot of the organizations that we are in coalition with have either explicitly or subconsciously like learned this history, right? So we know that outside of the state, patriarchy and internal violence was maybe the most destructive thing in the movement and in the party. And so we know we can't get free unless we all get free, and that can't just be rhetoric or jargon. So we operate in the Black Youth Project out of what we call a Black queer feminist lens. And so what that means is as we are fighting for Black liberation, we understand that that fight has to be intersectional. And so what that means is that we cannot fight for freedom and fight for freedom through the gaze of masculinity, right? It can't just be doing what Black men need and what Black men want, and we are all together in this fight for Black men, because that marginalizes and recreates so many of the oppressive systems that we are trying to deconstruct, right? So in Black Youth Project, what the Black queer feminist lens means is that as we are fighting for this liberation, we are also centering the struggle of Black women and Black queer folk, right? Because they are Black people, and they are doubly and sometimes triply oppressed in the system. If we are silent about that, we will end up in the same boat that our predecessors did. So, and that does not mean that like we are perfect, and like sexism is gone, or homophobia is gone. It is alive and well, it is violent, and it's still happening. And it's something that we are in a day-to-day basis, even internally, as we are trying to operate out of this politic, having to address and always account for.
This is an instance of where the next generation has learned from the mistakes of the past. One of the things that I wanted to note was, and I think both of you alluded to this, is you know, this film is a wonderful representation of the Panthers, but it's also very incomplete. It's not, there, you know, it ends at the tragic death, murder of Fred Hampton, but it doesn't show the sort of dissolution of core parts of the party, and the fact that there was an enormous amount of factionalization and infighting. A lot of that was generated by the external forces like the FBI and COINTELPRO, but there was also infighting because of many of these issues around leadership and around power and around gender and so forth hadn't gotten negotiated. So I find it, you know, really strengthening and heartening that this generation, BYP 100, is thinking about those things and working through that and making that a central part of your agenda.
Does anybody else have anything?
I think you can see in the film the number of Black women that were present. And my personal experience has always been to who has the best idea, the best methodology to solve a problem. We were about solutions in the Black Panther Party, and we were working through those same gender type issues. You know, about that time we had a phrase called the black male macho and the swag and all that. But in the Black Panther Party, everybody did the work. Women sold newspapers, men, the brothers worked at the medical center, the brothers cooked breakfast for the school kids. we all did equal work there, and we tried to work through gender issues. But we came out of a society, we brought our problems with us, you know, and we opened the doors to solutions. And you have to keep working on these issues, you know, all of them, the bigger issues and the internal issues as well. But when you talk to black women who participate in the Black Panther Party, they will acknowledge that they were given, for the most part, a fair shake. At least in Illinois, our sisters were strong. We didn't have a problem following sisters in the party. And another thing, another point that's not brought out is that how much study we put into, how many books we read. We read about revolutions all across the world. We understood about struggles for human rights, and that was the main piece of our thing was human rights. We got that from Malcolm, you know, and human rights is the umbrella of all of this. We're entitled to certain things as human beings, and black people in America have not been given their human rights, and we still fighting that struggle. And you need to be about that, whatever group, whatever your immediate focus is, you need to understand you need to have your human rights.
What you're saying just now actually touches on a couple of my next questions, and one of them was about the role of political education in the party, and also the role of political education today, how we use political education, how we use that to base build and also to better structure what our critiques are of the systems that are over us and better arm ourselves against those systems. So, anyone wants to take? Maybe Debbie, you can start. You go to me.
Okay. So for me, like, you know, political education is one of our greatest weapons, because just like, now that I do this, and like people might see me on the news every now and again, like I get to talk about this with people every day, and it's like bewildering, the lack of awareness that like everyday Americans have about our existence, right? And what it means to be American in a global context, what it means to be a black American, what is capitalism, right? Like it demands everything of our lives, and we don't really have a definition or understanding of the process and how it operates and how that's intersects with us as black people, right? The fact that the blackness is almost a capitalist creation, right? So how can we deconstruct the systems that are oppressing us if we do not understand them? So everybody I rock with always is trying to learn something new. We do this in a group-centered way, and we're trying now to figure out more and more how to not just be internal about this political education, but external, and engage with the community, engage with the masses, because there's been a divestment in education across the board in America over the last 40 years. So people are just less literate and less understanding of the world around them. So we realize wholeheartedly that like direct action, the protests, you know, the civil disobedience that you see is how you get the ball rolling, but how you capitalize off that or harness that, I don't want to use the word capitalize. How you harness that into actual power is to have a collective consciousness of the political and economic crux of our existence in our day-to-day lives. So that is a premier focus of ours.
Just to say a word about political education in the historical moment of the late 1960s, what the Black Panthers did was quite remarkable, because there were no Black Studies classes in 1966 and 1967, particularly in secondary schools and certainly not in high schools. There was a struggle at that point to begin to even have conversations about this. So the fact that the Black Panther Party instituted as part of their structure some form of political education, so that young folks were reading Che Guevara and Frantz Fanon and all of the sort of key revolutionary literatures of the time. That was remarkable. And it was different in different communities, but there was a conversation. So, you know, a lot of the imagery that you see of the Panthers is all about the marching and the protests and the performance, but there was this other whole level of conversation that was going on. The other thing that I just wanted to highlight, because it's something that I think is particularly interesting, is the role of like the art of Emory Douglas and the Black Panther newspaper and the other material that was circulated. it was all about education. It was all political education, right? Today we may do it through social media. In those days, it was old-fashioned print. But there were pamphlets, and there was a weekly newspaper. There was all kinds of material, and people really circulated it and read that material and shared it with each other. And that also really helped to create this sort of collective conversation from east to west and north and south.
It was Sam Napier who had a slogan, "Circulate to Educate." And Chairman Fred will make it very clear about political education. In fact, in the movie The Assassination of Chairman Fred, that's probably my favorite clip when he meets with the other members. And he talks about the importance of having political education, because without it, you're going nowhere. And with that, we also must understand that what Steve Biko said too, that we must distinguish the ability to be articulate and be intelligent. A lot of times we have a lot of well-trained dummies around. And you know, the education is no good if you're just going to come out and just, you know, regurgitate ruling class rhetoric, because we got a lot of people who do that already. So with the education, like I said, so the political education, so we merged theory with practice. Minister E.V.P. Newton, who was the chief theoretician of the party, he was a dialectical materialist, you know, like revolution is a moving thing, you know, and the stages that it went through and things like that. So we must take that into consideration too. That's pretty much.
Yeah, I think Harriet Tubman made a good point. She said that she could have freed more people if they had known they were slaves. And we have a lot of black people who think that everything is cool. You got an $800 phone and an iPad, and you know, you think you're moving up. When, you know, racism smacks you in the face, when economics gets to you, you know, we said it's a class situation, it's a class struggle. We talk about the proletariat, the lumpen proletariat. We went to the basic people, we went to everyday people, and we tried to organize them, give them strength. But we read from the Red Book. Our first text was The Wretched of the Earth. And that, Brother Frantz Fanon, gave you, as black people, perspective on your colonial mentality. To understand that we've been programmed by the dominant society to think a certain way, to respond a certain way. And if you don't know you're a slave, then you can't free yourself from that slavery. And so, the reading that we read Das Kapital, we read everything that we thought was relevant to changing our perspective and changing the world in a better way, in a more positive way. So you need to open your horizons. Don't read everything that just complements what you do. Read some things that contradicts what you do, and understand how that impacts you. You know, so you have to broaden your horizons.
I wanted to add that with the political education, it just really didn't stop at the reading. A lot of times, you know, you have to get out there and do some things, and like I said, merge the theory with practice. But when you're looking at the Minister E.V.P. Newton, and you got to understand when you even look at Chairman Fred, you know, as people get involved, like Chairman said, in one of three ways: inspirations, aspirations, desperation. It's one thing to leave a nice, cushy home in Maywood to get involved. And it's another thing because you know you ain't never had shit. So you know, and you know, so we must look at that too. Take all those things in consideration, because a lot of times we like to kid ourselves that we pretty much on the same thing, but that's not true. I joke with my wife sometimes that the only place I think everybody wants the same things at the casino. That's the way it is. But when it comes to revolution, when it comes to doing this work, you won't find that. So I think that's also must be taken into consideration.
Any other comments? Okay, so I think the next thing I want to ask about is coalition work. So we want to talk about what type of coalitions the Panthers were building, and think about that both across communities and within the community, and across age lines as well. Like how are we bringing people in who aren't just, you know, the young people that they mentioned being the party base. And also I want to talk about that in terms of today. So.
Well, you know, you mentioned the concept of intergenerational, and you know, as was spoken to in the movie, we were pretty young. I was 19 when I joined the party, and we really didn't have, well, I was developing a worldview. The political orientation classes, the political education I got came pretty quick. You got to realize at 19, how mature are you? And I can say that now because I'm 66, I can look back and say, oh yeah, you really didn't know anything. But we did know a lot, and we engaged seniors, we engaged adults, we challenged the status quo, and they helped us, they knocked the corners off of what we were trying to say, but we also broadened their perspectives. So in terms of coalition building, because we were pushing human rights, we got a lot of support from a lot of different camps and a lot of different people. Because we were pushing human rights, we got a groundswell of support for people who were looking for the right thing to do, and that's very important. You know, when you're building coalitions, you want to find what's similar between your group and another group. The whole issue with going to what they did in Uptown, Brother Bob Lee, when they went to Uptown and organized the hillbillies up there. I mean, they were being oppressed like we were. It's a class struggle. Poor people suffer the same thing. When you go to court, if you see white people in court, they're poor white people. You know, the Just Us system is black people, but it's for whites, it's for Hispanics, it's poor people. So when you're trying to build coalitions, you find things that are similar, and that's what you work upon. And in this country, there's a big gap between the people who have little and the people who have a lot.
Like back to the education thing, and with that, the coalition thing, one of the sisters that came with me today, she's from off the block. She probably never heard of none of these terms, never probably seen none of y'all faces, nothing like that, but she understand, like, you know, 12s, 5 get out on the people that be out there and be, you know, doing as the Panther Party did, turning the communities into classrooms. And, you know, that's very important, you know. A lot of the coalitions, like he mentioned, with the Young Patriots, excuse me, with the Young Lords and the Young Patriot parties. And at that time, they were a very reactionary party. They had Confederate flags down on their uniform. But Chairman Fred, through the politics of the Black Panther Party, was able to win them to points of unity. And that's very important. So a lot of times people forget or want to negate the fact that these was like young brothers, 14 to 22, 24, you know, they came from the streets, the block. You know, like, I don't even like saying grassroots, but it's like really the weeds, you know? All the time people are forgotten about. So it's important that we acknowledge that. And a lot of times, you know, people can feel, you know, they may not understand what you're saying, but they can feel it. Like Tupac said, they can feel it when you speak, and they know if you're real or not. So we can't just get caught up with that. But moving on, like, so coalitions too, like that. So we work with everybody who's, you know, working with us. Like I said, the POCC, a lot of times people hear that because it's Prisoners of Conscience Community, it's a prison activist group, but it's not. It's a revolutionary group. And,
one of the things that the two of you are highlighting, which I think is really important for this audience, is that there was, you know, a particular focus in the Illinois Panthers. I think that this organization, the local organization, Chicago and Illinois, did extraordinary work, perhaps even more than many of the other chapters in that kind of coalition building. It happened in different parts of the country for different reasons, but you all should feel, I think, a special sense of pride and honor in the ability for the Illinois Panthers to reach out to that extent. The Black Panthers were also, there were many organizations that followed in their lead out of these coalitions. So in California, it was the Brown Berets, primarily Chicano activists. On the East Coast, it was the Young Lords, primarily Puerto Rican activists. It was Gray Panthers, senior citizen activists. There were a whole range of community groups that saw that they had a sort of common goal, common ideology with the Black Panthers. So that's another important thing to see, is that the Black Panthers were not the only ones that were doing this political work, but they often served as the catalyst for inspiring this kind of activism elsewhere.
I don't know how much time we have, but I really want you to understand that in the world at that time, in the 1960s, in the late 1960s, in the world, African nations were throwing off colonialism. There was revolution in France. There was a whole lot of movement in the world changing old to new. And so out of that spirit across internationally, change was in the air. So there was a consciousness already. But our particular struggle as Black people had developed through cycles after cycles after cycles. And so for some reason they separate the Black Panther Party. We're at a break point between civil rights and Black power. Well, when Stokely was organizing in the South, he realized that white people had power. White people had political organizations, and Black people didn't. Black people hadn't even voted. But it's still part of the same thing. We had SNCC members to help organize the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. You know, we have grown and we have learned from each successive movement, from Garley, from Denmark, DC, wherever you want to go, is a continuum. So, you know, just keep the historical reference in mind with this as well. You know, we weren't isolated doing this. It was all part of a trend of those times. And there's a lot going on in the world once again. So it's looking a lot like 1968 to me today.
Can I say something right quick? I just want to reiterate what he said. I grew up in the South. Stokely Carmichael organized me and others at Fisk University in 1966. Nicky Giovanni was there. I went to Tennessee State. My wife went to Fisk. So, as you said, the movement was all over. And they did the same thing that gentleman said. They made us decide the physical revolution. That's when they introduced us to all of the books of the world and what was happening in the world. Wretched and Earth, as the gentleman said. So that movement was similar. Even though those of us who came out of the South, we were organized by SNCC. Our parents was following Martin Luther King. So it was a coalition of young people, old people, and that's what happened. We were first generation cotton pickers kids, and so Stokely came to the South and organized us. Okay.
Right.
I guess I'm the voice of today. Word. Okay. Yeah. So coalition building, I think we all realize today it is very important, and I think culturally and direct, especially like in public direct actions, that is a part of it, right? There are many faces. We live in a pluralistic society. I think that's the word. It's a lot of people, right? We don't live in a black and white world. And so there's a lot of work that is done. But also we need to realize that we have not, at this moment, obtained the power internally, right? To really start branching out and have the unified front that will be able to sustain. I think the brother made a good point of the time that they were in. We can't really take that for granted. It was really a 20-year period post-World War II through Brown v. Board and then Emmett Till and then the Civil Rights Movement. So everybody had a revolutionary consciousness and were aware. And so right now, like up until about Trayvon Martin, America really has been asleep in the 21st century. We've been living in this idealistic world of this post-MLK dream that is a fallacy, right? So what we are trying to do is first like wake ourselves up, like the idea of being woke, right? Like to dream, you have to be asleep. So the idea of being woke is what we're kind of doing first to be able to have the power to then build and do coalition work. But internally, right, on an organizational level, that is something that we're trying to learn within our communities, right? Like how can we operate for Black liberation specifically first with this certain politic or this focus, and you have this other politic or other focus, how can we build power with that? and then use those models to maybe have a wider, broad-based coalition. But that is definitely something that we are aspiring to build to have that power, because Fred was raw already by the time he went and talked to the young lord, not the young lord, but when he was talking to the hillbillies, right? They knew who he was because they had power, and we are working to get to that point. Veronica Barnes, come up here.
Veronica is on this panel, but Veronica has also been really involved with a lot of the organizing and the protests that have been happening over the past year and a half. I mean, longer for you actually, because you've been doing things live for longer than that, around the trauma campaign. So I was wondering if maybe maybe you could talk a bit about the role of the coalition today. And maybe talk a little bit about what you see as everyone actually on this panel, what struggles we have today, what parallels we're running along, and what we need to do to get ourselves out of where we're at.
Well, first, I just came to watch the movie. Yes. So let me introduce myself. My name is Veronica Morris-Moore. I'm a youth organizer. I've been organizing since I was 17. I'm 23 now. And I organize with a youth organization called Fearless Leading by the Youth, which is a youth-led organization that is centered around organizing, in particular direct organizing, and training young people around that organizing and giving them the political education that they need to understand why it's important for us to organize as young people. And something that I was involved in that Fly started was the Trauma Center campaign to get a level 1 trauma center. So for me, it was very important, maybe like 3 years into the campaign, that we started to build coalition and work with other people around the issue, because we were the directly impacted, being young Black people and fitting into that demographic of folks who are most vulnerable to trauma, right, through gun violence and things like that. But it was also important for us to build community around this issue. And essentially building coalition and community is building power. That is people power, and that's that bridge. And so we build community with not just other young Black people, but we also build community with people who represented different faith communities, people who also existed within the university either as a student or as a professor, or even down to, not even down to, but even over to the nurses in the hospital. And all of these people came together to sit on our coalition to bring both different resources and also different stories to tell about how this impacted them as a Southside not having a trauma center. And so to me, coalition is this beautiful place where we actually are bridging a gap towards revolution. So I think a lot of times that we forget, because we have so much work to do within our organizations, that the revolution isn't just going to be Fly. The revolution isn't just going to be BYP 100 shutting down the mayor's office. That it's going to be a collective of all of us with a common conscience and a common knowledge and a common understanding that we have to fight for each other in order for us to finally free ourselves from those who are oppressing us. Oh yeah, I just came to see them.
Yeah, I think we can open it up now to questions and comments from the audience about the film, about what's...
Okay, so this is a question also just around the discussion of like coalition stuff. My name is Shantae Salisbury, and this is my friend John. And we're part of a project called the New Age of Chicago. It's a group of teams of us from all around the city of Chicago. And we're basically organizing a rally of the Brownfield community to promote the support and support Black-owned businesses in Brownfield.
Right.
So, just letting y'all know, hopefully we can. We're still trying to work out the days because we're trying to start at Rainbow Push and march down to Kent College Prep. So we're still like working out financially because we're all teens. We don't have much money. So. Yeah.
But you got you. You worth a lot more than money.
Oh. Is that for me or?
Thank you. You reach out to us.
Thank you. I just want to comment. Everything is nice and the movie was great and there were comments. And with the older ones, one more to the generation want to deal with the youth. And as she brought out earlier, made an announcement on the 5th, we have global girls and they're international girls. And what is so great about that organization is these are young people that's graduating and with the highest scores, getting ready for college, and this is within their 12 years now. They've done a lot for the community, and they'll be on the 5th of February, and the next day they'll be off to Africa. And so I just want that known, and have, like the room was packed tonight, we should have that packed then on the 5th of these young people, encouraging them. Because as we've been talking about, a lot of violence, a lot of things. So we also have what process to have children heal and doing things for them. So we want to encourage that the younger generation to be positive and seeing that it's more than just hanging out, shooting, getting high, selling drugs or whatever, that they do have a place in this world. So I would like very much for you all to support on February 5th at 7 o'clock for Global Girls International. Where? Here. Here.
I have a question. I don't need the microphone, I don't think. We saw J. Edgar Hoover say, don't let them get a messiah, and you young activists seem intent on not having a leader. Apparently that scares them to have. Maybe, is there a reason? Is that purposeful? Do you not want to have a charismatic leader that would be a target? Or is that, I'm trying to figure out your strategy here.
Yeah, I guess that's for me. We do focus on a group-centered leadership model for many reasons. One, I think the film or history in general gives us many examples of how limited it is to put these ideas or put that power into one person, because then you can kill the king, right, and the movement dies with it. But also, we are aware, like I opened up with, of how we internally recreate oppressive systems. And so, like, even me sitting in this chair, while like my folks are in the audience, is somewhat uncomfortable as the like charismatic black dude, right? And so there is a limitation, and I, in my position, have to be aware of the fact that sometimes just because I am a man, I can say the same thing that Veronica just next to me said, and I might get a few more questions, right? And we need to know that that is oppressive, and that is not only going to hurt Veronica, but structurally, right? Like that takes away our power. If half of the population are stripped of their voice, are marginalized, are objectified, are victim to a type of violence that men don't have to face, right? So as a black man, first of all, I can't even speak appropriately for what a black woman goes through when dealing with the police, right? That is a different set of experiences. So in order to adequately address the holistic issue and the structure across the board, it has to be a democratic process, right? We can't be fighting against like oppression and basically fascism is what we're dealing with if we are not being democratic ourselves or modeling what we want to recreate. So a dictator or spokesman is just a limited paradigm.
Yeah, I also wanted to add in my 2 cents as another UIP member. I noticed too that you said that we're bent on having a leaderless movement, whereas I think a lot of us actually see it as us having a leaderful movement. We're interested in having and building capacity for all of us and making sure that all of us have these skills to be able to step forward when we need to and step back when we need to.
One of the things with the leaders too, we must note that, you know, every time they do assassinate all our leaders, whether it be Lumumba or Sankara or Chairman Fred or many others who left the language in concentration camps, or what are called prisons, that the film had forgotten about too. That's a different topic as well. And we also must acknowledge that the leaders that the state will go and grab and put up as our as our spokesperson, as our saviors, and give you, when they can create you, they can break you, and we see that as well. So we must be careful for the ones that they say, well, here you go, here's the spokesperson and stuff like that too. So
I just want to reiterate his point that that J. Edgar Hoover memo, like often we only look at that one line of the rise of the Black Messiah, but like the next sentence, he said we need to eradicate the rise of the Black Messiah and create our own, right? So we then have to be critical of who have been placed up in front and who was around right then, who was not a threat enough to be targeted, right? Who was allowed to survive, and we need to definitely be critical of that.
We got somebody in the back in the purple.
Purple. Oh, row behind you first.
Sorry, I don't have a microphone, so I'm going to speak kind of loud. I have two questions. One is directed to the brother with the hat. Sorry I didn't get your name. I'm going to start off with the question. How can I get in contact with you, sir, with the hat? We have an email or website that we can locate you at. All right, secondly, you want to answer that first question?
I'm like, I got a lot of hair on my face. I'm not that old, but I'm just not that young where I know all the technology things. I'm struggling with that. But there is a blog spot. It's Chairman Fred Jr.blogspot.com. I might have butchered it. There's also a Citizens of the Conscience Committee Facebook page. And there's also a radio show that's done every Wednesday. But like I said, if you start with that, you can find all the links with that. I can't really direct you centrally because I'll send you off, but I want to say it's Chairman Fred Jr. blogspot.com. There's 2 events that we have every year. No matter what the condition is, it's not going to stop. That's December 4th, which is International Revolutionary Day. And that's held to commemorate the assassinations of Chairman Fred and Defense Captain Mark Clark, and that's held on the west side of Chicago at 2337 West Chairman Fred Hampton Way, or what people may have called Monroe Street. And then there's the other one, which is the Chairman Fred Streets Party, which is the August 30th affair to celebrate the birthday of Chairman Fred. So we'll be out there on those 2 days every year, and also, like I said, the blog spot and then the Facebook as well.
Okay, thank you, sir. My second question is, do you believe that maybe the Black Panthers overlooked that our true history lies in the Holy Scriptures, and we are the children of Israel, and that our oppression is a result of the direct disobedience to the laws that were given to us by our Holy Creator or by our Father? Would you agree that they may have overlooked that or negated that?
Well, I'm not old enough to be a member of the party, and to say that, like I said, I work with the Citizens of the Conscience Committee. I will say in the final analysis, if that's what you're trying to ask me, like I said, revolution is a moving thing. I don't think I would be a disservice to say, in my finite wisdom, that things were overlooked, because I don't know, like I said, the time and conditions of things was going on. But in this day and time, like I said, we can block when trails roll down. They don't care about none of that stuff. So, and like I said, moving forward with that, that's the best I can answer. Maybe Mr. Gaspard,
We didn't have an issue with religion. We didn't have an issue with what your philosophy was, as long as you were going to serve the people, as long as you were going to advance the revolution. So however you come to your spirituality, brother, is a personal thing. Okay, so that's how we address that. That's why it's not part of the 10-point program. That's a personal, that's an individual thing.
Want to keep up organizing the question? Yep.
So, we could all agree, like working together for like a cause, could like make greater contribution to fight that we agree on. Are there any steps that like Chicago Youth 100 I'm sorry, I hesitated.
Organization OCAD, which works around the deportation of immigrants we have been working with, and they help us with one of our actions. I think there is solidarity and concern and sympathy for the Palestinian struggle. But like, I get asked that question a lot, and it only feels like it's asked when people are fighting for blackness, right? So I don't see a lot of people going to an indigenous rally and saying, "What are you doing for black people?" Right? Where are you? How are you active? Where are you on the South Side? Right? So we're right off 71st Street right now. And there's a lot of people. There's a lot of schools. There's a lot of bad jobs. There's a lot of people dying that takes up all of our time. Right? Like we are volunteering, and people are working sometimes 20, 30-hour weeks for no wage to worry about an issue that is taking 500 years to start to really figure out. So it's only so many of us, and we have capacity issues. So there are a multitude of injustices in the world, and we have sympathy and solidarity for that. But in terms of our putting our bodies there and our energy, we got to focus on us.
I'm sorry, I want to be respectful of time and want to honor as many questions as we can. So I saw 3 or 4 hands. We're currently at 9:28. Is it okay if we answer those questions and then cap it? And I'm going to ask that we ask the questions and answer them as succinctly as possible, but also with some
repetition, my routine, you know, whether like like every day you gotta wake up. Billy Shimmer Fred said, every day you gotta wake up and be like, I'm the people, I'm the proletariat, I'm not the pig. The politics, it's like garlic. It's one of those things you gotta keep doing. It's keep working with anything, fine tuning. And it's great that you said the attitude, because not only must the attitude of the police culture change, but our attitude must change. It got to be to the point where back then it was a climate that made you either get down or force to fall. You know what I'm saying? Where it wasn't cool to call sisters out their names, or where even the music was different like that. So it must be that to that day where it ain't too cool for someone to call 12s on a child playing with a toy gun at the playground. You know what I'm saying? Or someone to call 12 because, they have a contradiction with their son, or, you know what I'm trying to say? So it must, it must get to that point where our attitudes as well change, and that can only come through, like you said, repetition with the music, what we watch, what you identify with, what you attract to. And I'm gonna say this in closing, I believe it was Lenin who said what it takes people to learn in 20 years ordinary time, can be learned in 2 years of revolutionary time. So we must get out there, immerse everything in practice, and then, like I said, it becomes party. Like the soccer man, if you're on 69th Street Bucks, they got the song sock. He's a sock man. He just don't sell socks. He defined that phenomenon. He is a sock man. So that's what I'm
Okay, so the 4 questions are 1, 2, 3, and then 4.
I can identify with the Black Panther movement a lot because I do organizing within the Puerto Rican community. And the way we keep the attitude alive is that we are organizing around the freedom campaign of Oscar Lopez Rivera. And I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware that we are in alignment with your struggle. It's our struggle. But yeah, so that's how we keep it alive. And I feel like, since I was 16, it's just been continuous for me. So I feel like I haven't been asleep, So with all these killings of young people and stuff. Just 3 years ago, I was passing out the newspaper, and I did it with such pride because I was making the connections to the Black Panther newspaper, and I was just like super happy to like be passing out this newspaper at one of our Puerto Rican parades and stuff. But yeah, I just embody that. And my question is, for me, one of the, I mean, aside from Oscar Lopez not being free, one of my biggest things that upsets me is the fact that Jason Dyke was paid, the paid leave thing, you know? So how do we like get that money back? Because prisoners, I read an article about like prisoners being forced to pay back money for their incarceration. And so if prisoners who are already poor are being forced to pay back money, like how do we get money back from like the paid leave or money back from like killers that were laid off with pensions and stuff like that?
I want, so that is egregious, right? That Jason Van Dyke got $1. But I want every penny that goes to any police officer. I don't want there to be police officers. So I am a police and prison abolitionist. And so the way we are starting that is that we have to build the consciousness that we need to know that 40% of every dollar in Chicago is going to the Chicago Police Department, and that does not count for all of the other police forces that have jurisdiction in Chicago, right? So millions of dollars of every day is being invested into this violent, destructive institution. So what we are asking is for people to defund the police simply because they don't keep us safe in any fashion, and then to fund Black futures. So there are a lot, and build Black futures because it's more than just dollars, but specifically the dollars, we just want them all back. And so you know, if that means getting them from 40% to 35% to 20% to they're gone. So we know if we were to look at all of the ways that they're stealing money, we'll be here till 12 o'clock, right? So just the fact that they exist is stealing from the people. So I think simply enough, we want them gone.
All right, thank you guys for coming out this evening. I just want to say one of the things that we have a problem with is grouping. And the problem with a 15 bean soup is that you don't know which bean tastes the best. So when you group all the police officers together, I think you do the humans.
See, he was defending the cops. You see what happened? See what happened? We gotta go on that question.